race day in Canberra, where the gallop to be number one never ends.
Word is New England may soon be changing stables. Baranoa safe for now, surrounding himself with stablemates. Farah trying hard, so too Fairfax. Leadership aspirants looming thick and fast. Canning still in the picture, Hume thereabouts.
The light relief doing little to disguise the opposition's ongoing difficulties and its desire to turn the heat back on the government.
Power prices to be cut by $275. No one left behind. Well, no one told homeless people that. Life will be cheaper under me.
An effort all too quickly subsumed by the ongoing soap opera over the future of the coalition and its climate policy.
Well, there's a reason you have divorce laws, I guess, but we would be much better served to stay with the Nationals because we have given Australia good government over this last 80 years, so that would be my strong preference. But it's not at any cost.
Shadow climate spokesman Dan Tehan told his Liberal colleagues today that he's imminently close to finalising a review into whether they follow the Nationals and dump their net zero promise. For some Liberals, it's become a test of who dictates the terms of the coalition partnership.
We're the Liberal Party. We're not Nationals light. We will make our own decision. And, Susan Lee demonstrated very clearly what leadership looks like in May of this year. The National Party walked away from the coalition briefly, and she stood her ground. With the coalition sniping over green energy, the government has been quick to strike a contrast with a new policy that could give millions of Australians a chance to get up to 3 hours of free electricity a day.
This is not the answer to all the challenges in the energy grid, but it is a meaningful step forward, a material improvement, a chance to improve the opportunities for people to reduce their bills and put them in charge.
Since the election, of course, they've ripped themselves apart over energy policy. They haven't been fighting about this for 6 months. They've been fighting about it for 2 decades, Mr Speaker. 20 years with 23 different failed energy policies, 3 Prime Ministers torn down.
Driving the government's push to bring energy relief to households is a broader worry about the cost of living, particularly those with mortgages. Today, hearing unwelcome news.
It's possible that there's no more rate cuts. It's possible there's some more, but as I said earlier, we didn't go up as high. We might not have to come down as far. Trapped between a rising unemployment rate and uncomfortably strong inflation, Governor Michelle Bullock leaving little question the road ahead is uncertain, with more price pressure to come. We're, I'd say at the moment, a little more concerned about making sure that we do get inflation sustainably back in the band, because as the forecasts show in the Statement on Monetary Policy, this blip in September is going to stay in the inflation numbers for basically the next 12 months. So it's going to have a 3 on it, which is not ideal. Painful as it is for those with mortgages, today's rate decision points to risks for the government. Its political strategy includes a desire to spend more on welfare, aged care, disability and defence. Just this week, the Prime Minister flagged his intention to deliver future universal childcare. Ambitions for an economy the Reserve Bank fears is already going as fast as it can without generating more inflation.
The RBA put a really important chart in the quarterly statement showing that the big structural lift in government spending in the past decade, which has continued apace in the last 3 years under this current government, is really all about recurrent spending. That, I think, is increasingly looking like a key factor in why ultimately the problem we could be faced with is that interest rates are not high enough to get inflation down.
The coalition eager to make the same point.
Given the government's spending is running 4 times faster than the economy, isn't it time to rein the Treasurer in to stop his spending spree?
It's an argument the Treasurer rejected out of hand.
If those opposite want to claim that budgets are the decisive factor in interest rate decisions, then they've got to explain those 3 interest rate cuts this year, including 2 interest rate cuts which came after the budget in March.
The problem, at least in part, boils down to an economy where too many dollars are chasing too few available goods and services, or in the dry language of central banking, too much demand.
Households would argue that they've taken the RBA's medicine, that they've tightened the belts. So who's to blame now for the uptick in this new inflation?
I guess there's a couple of things. The first is that it's possibly telling us that there's a little more excess demand in the economy than we had thought.
We now have clear evidence that inflation is no longer falling, could well be picking up. If this economy continues to recover, if businesses start to invest again and employ, we start to see these inflation pressures intensify, we could see a situation evolve where interest rates have to go up quite a bit.
Back to where that story started with strife in the Liberal Party. Dan Tehan is the Shadow Minister for Energy and Emissions Reduction. Dan Tehan, welcome back to 7:30.
Pleasure to be with you again, Sarah.
Is dropping net zero now the only path to ending disunity in the Liberal Party?
Well, as I've said and as Susan has said, we're going through a process. We're going through a Liberal Party process. The National Party are going through their process, and then once both processes are finalised, we will come together and we will agree a joint position. Now,
isn't that process, Dan Tehan, isn't that lots of processes in your answer there, though? Isn't that process now simply about saving your leader or replacing your leader?
No, it's about getting the policy right, taking the time, getting the policy right so that we can put an alternative to the government of the failed approach that we're seeing under Anthony Albanese and Chris Bowen, which has seen electricity prices rise by 39%. It's seen electricity prices put inflation at this country higher than it otherwise would be, which is putting pressure on households and on the family budget. So the most important thing we do here is get our policy right, because it's absolutely clear that the Labor Party approach is failing.
You said that you said earlier today that it's imminent. Clearly, you've described a situation that, in your view, is urgent. So what are you waiting for?
Well, I said from the very start that it would take 6 to 9 months, and I'm working methodically through this issue. Obviously, I've got to consult with colleagues, I've got to consult with industry, I've got to get a sense of what energy retailers are saying. We've got to look at those hard to abate sectors like agriculture and land transport and bring all that together in a coherent policy. Now, as I've said, we've got to make sure we get it right, because if we do, we can then make sure we hold the government to account for its failing approach.
But the problem with you taking so long to do this, the 6 to 9 months that you're talking about, it now means that the Nationals are leading the policy debate inside the coalition on this issue. Do you regret letting them take control of this issue inside the Liberal Party?
No, we're always having independent processes, and that was clear. And obviously, in the first instance, they were suggesting that it might take them over 12 months. Now, they decided to shorten the time frame that they were operating in.
How much difficulty did that create for you and for Susan Lee?
None at all. I've been meeting with the National Party through our working group every week that the Parliament has sat this year, since May, and we'll continue to do that. I'm doing that again tomorrow. We've had very constructive engagement as part of that working group. So what we've been doing, while each individual party has been doing their work, we've also been coming together to make sure we've got a dual track process, and that has worked very, very effectively. So the fact that the National Party came out on the weekend hasn't changed the approach that we're taking. As you know, we had a very important meeting of all our Liberal Party MPs, or a lot of our Liberal Party MPs, last Friday. It was incredibly constructive. The thing that I took out of that meeting was how much we agreed on. We have to have an energy affordability first approach. We've got to make sure we do our fair share when it comes to emissions reduction. We've got to make sure that our approach is one which is about energy abundance rather than the restrictive approach that the government is taking.
Now, you say that meeting was a constructive meeting, but at the moment and publicly, a number of your colleagues, Liberal moderates, are saying that abandoning this policy will make you unelectable to new generations of young voters, especially in urban areas. Have you lost sight of that?
always said that this policy was going to be like threading a needle, and there are a variety of views when it comes to our party room, when it comes to the coalition on this issue, and that's why it's challenging, and I haven't resolved from that in any way. But what I want to do is make sure that the policy approach that we take is absolutely in our national interest, and if we can do that, I'm sure that we can get everyone on the same page, because I can tell you one thing we're absolutely all united on, and that is that the government's approach when it comes to energy and climate change is absolutely failing the Australian people and failing our nation.
So what
We're seeing
happens?
that through high electricity
hold on,
bills.
let me just stay with if I may,
it's impacting our international competitiveness in so many ways.
I just want to stay with the,
including the.
I just want to stay, Dan Tehan, with the moves inside the Liberal Party, because a number of them have said that they would move to the backbench if you go ahead and abandon net zero, which is what it is looking like you are about to do. So what will happen, again, to Susan Lee's leadership if she loses a bunch of her supporters, the moderates, to the backbench if and when you drop net zero, a commitment to net zero by 2050?
Well, Sarah, one of the things that I've never done is answer question based on big ifs. What I always do is make sure I'm focused on doing the right thing by the Australian people and by our nation, and that's what I'll continue to do, and that's why getting this policy approach is so right, because I don't think there is a more important issue for our nation than going forward than getting our energy and emissions reduction policy right, because without energy abundance, without the power that we need to grow our nation, then we're going to see our living standards to continue to collapse like they are under this government. My focus is just about making sure I get the policy right, and that's what I intend to do.
Do you support the Nationals' push to double down on coal-fired power?
Look, I respect the National Party process. We're a coalition.
You respect
just like
it, but do you support their position to double down on the use of coal?
Well, Sarah, I'm going through a policy process at the moment, and what I've got to do as part of that is I've got to make sure that we have a Liberal approach, and then I've got to reach across and make sure that we bring the National Party on board so that we've got a coalition approach. Now, that's going to take some give and take. I can tell you what I do support is energy affordability first as an absolute priority, and us doing our bit when it comes to emissions reduction.
So does that mean that an option for more coal, as the Nationals put forward yesterday, could become a unified coalition policy?
Well, Sarah, I know you'd love me to announce our policy here on your program, but that would be not respecting my parliamentary colleagues, and I'm not going to do that. But what I will say to you is that our policy will be in the national interest and will make sure it puts energy affordability first and emissions reduction as a very serious part of what we're looking to do, and it will then enable us to hold this very, very bad government to account when it comes to energy, because their focus seems to be energy poverty as far as I can see.
And just briefly, your portfolio, as I said at the beginning, is emissions reductions. Without a target, this is the Nationals' position, without a target, isn't an open-ended commitment to reduce emissions essentially meaningless?
Well, Sarah, what I'll continue to say is I've got to develop a policy. I've got to make sure it's a serious policy. I've got to make sure it's serious when it comes to emissions reduction, and that's what I'm seeking to do. And I've also got to make it serious when it comes to putting downward pressure on electricity prices and energy prices, and that's what I'll continue to do. And I'll do it in the national interest, not on some ideological pursuit like Chris Bowen and Anthony Albanese seem to be pursuing at the moment.
Dan Tehan, thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.